Hello, welcome to the opening initial podcast recording here for the Ukraine Military History podcast. And I'm sitting here with my two colleagues, let's call it the co-founders of the center and members of the team for the Borderlands Foundation. So I'm Sam Cook. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Borderlands Foundation based here in Kiev, Ukraine. And I'm sitting here with Colonel retired Ihor Kosyak and Sergeant or Senior Sergeant Ievgen Malik. And we're going to just have a conversation here about the Ukraine Military History podcast and the center that we're starting here about military history. So briefly about the Borderlands Foundation, I started it. I've been living in Ukraine since 2018. My wife's Ukrainian. I moved here long before the war to start a digital marketing agency, or move my digital marketing agency and marketing company here. And when the full-scale invasion happened, as a former military history professor at West Point, actually I was a professor of Western civilization, Russian history, but a military history student as an undergraduate, I decided to start a foundation to support the war effort, as a lot of people did at that point. And after the initial, let's call it shock of the invasion wore off, I realized I had this foundation. I wanted to do something that was aligned with my passions and interest. And we made the mission of the foundation to make sure Ukraine's heroes are never forgotten, tell the story of the war for history through the Ukrainian veterans themselves, and to also help Ukrainians with psychological recovery. So the Borderlands Foundation has Ukraine Military History Center and Ukraine Center for Traumatic Stress. There are both of our initiatives, and this podcast is going to be our effort to start publishing the history of the war, get us out there as the premier center for Ukraine military history, and really a premier center across the world for the study of military history. Military history in the United States is something that not a lot of universities actually teach anymore. It's very specialized in a few elite schools, West Point being the leader probably, and some great military history professors around the world, or around the United States, and some elite universities. But it's not a widely studied field. It's viewed as kind of an anachronism. It's something that we used to study because we used to fight wars, and obviously in Ukraine right now, which has the most military combat experience of any country in the world per capita, per person, I believe this is going to be the renaissance of the study of military history across the world, to teach the lessons of the war to Ukraine, hopefully its allies, learn those lessons, and defend freedom across the world. So I'm going to introduce my co-host here because I want everyone in our audience here for the Ukraine Military History podcast to get to know these people, because you're going to be hearing all of our voices in English, in Ukrainian, over the next several years as we produce these episodes. So first, I'm going to introduce Ievgen, who's a senior sergeant who was fought in the Marines, and I'm going to let Ievgen just tell us a little bit about himself, your background, and why you decided to join this project and the Borderlands Foundation specifically.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so my name is Ievgen. I'm 32 years old. I used to serve in 36th Marine Brigade, and I was serving there since 2018 to 2024. I used to fight in Mariupol. I used to be in Russian captivity 2.5 years, and I can tell more than I'm originally from Poltava city, small casual Ukrainian city, Ukrainian region, in the central part of Ukraine. All the history we were like part of Ukraine, together with Kiev, and I just decided in the year 2018 I've seen that the war with Russia will be, in my opinion, for 100%, and I was right. That's why I joined the army. This is not the only reason I did it. Joining an army is a big step. You cannot just make a decision because of one thing. I got a lot of personal feelings, and I just decided to make this step, and I think that was right. No regrets, and thank you to Ukrainian Marines. That was really, well, probably not wonderful time in the captivity, but great time, and I'm glad that I got such an opportunity to fight for my country, and survived, actually.
Would you do it all over again if you knew now what you?
Captivity, no.
Yeah.
Syrian army, I like army. Yeah. There are some people who are into it. I don't know why. Maybe some because of grandfathers. I don't know how does it work. But some guys, some people are watching army and they say, I will never go there. And some people watching that and think like, oh my God, I want to join. I am one of these people. From the very first day, I went to Marines. I joined to Marines, and I knew that this is not the land force or aviation. This is something else, and everyone knows that airborne, special forces, and Marine Corps this is the hard way. And in USA, in Ukraine, in Europe, in any country, and I knew what I did, and well, I think I like it. I can serve in army further in the future, probably. For me, that's not a problem for sure, but not the captivity.
You're not going to sign up for that again, yeah?
No, never.
Understood. And look, Ievgeny, I met you right after, I think you'd been released from captivity maybe a couple months?
14th of September, yes.
2024.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we were just coming up with the idea of the Historical Center at that point. Well, I've had the idea for a while, but coming up with the staff, Ihor and some of the other people we were bringing on board, and I just realized that the reason I wanted you involved specifically, one is you've got an amazing, powerful story that everyone needs to hear. Like, you are the model for me of the stories that our center wants to draw out, and we've already interviewed you, and we'll interview some more on your stories, because history is written by people who were there, all right? And ultimately, your memory of that time, properly recorded like we've done, and we're going to continue to do by interviewing you some more, is the building blocks that professional historians use to write history, right? And they're going to watch your 3 hours plus interview we have already recorded of you in captivity, which we'll be releasing in future podcast episodes, 2 of them, and then also your recollections of the Battle of Mariupol in detail, which we'll also be releasing, that is what forms the history. And then you get all of the soldiers who can recall and want to go on camera, and they record their stories, and some of them are going to, they're not going to have the people forget dates and times, but you remember very specific things. And historians have to sort through all of that and come up with, and then they look at the official records of what your brigade says happened during that time, and the duty logs and footage. You put together hard data with memories, and that forms stories which become history, right? And the reason I wanted to bring you on board was Ihor and I are former officers. I was in the United States Army, Ihor here in the Ukrainian Army. Officers have a very important perspective in telling the story of history, but a lot of times history is very privileged for officers and forgets the sergeants, right? The guys who get the orders from the officers, and then they're sitting here saying, are you kidding me? Is this really what you want us to do? And I think your perspective
Yes.
is vital here.
Well, that's true. I like the idea of all this history center because, well, first of all, what I like, that's all in English language. Because when I came back from the captivity, I made a small research, and I could see that, unfortunately, we do not have any Ukrainian history content about this war, and that is pretty, for me, I cannot understand that, because this theme has to be in the head of any country, especially in Europe and in the United States, because, 15 years ago, if you would say to any Ukrainian citizen that we will have this war, we will get million casualties, people would say that you are God mind, like you are crazy. What are you talking about? Just 15 years ago, and look what we have now. So people who are living in Portuguese, in Ireland, I don't know, in Iceland, if they think that, well, it's not gonna happen with them. Well, guys, in 15 years we will see. I hope that it will not be like that, but that is possible. Everything. I don't know what will happen. So. People have to be prepared. And moreover, I can see that even in Ukraine, not a lot of people can understand what is going on clear on the land, because that is so, nobody speak with the active military people. Nobody tries to get these small points, how different operations were done, how proper was done, and that can be a problem in future for a lot of people. I think we should work more on that, and I'm really glad that you bring me here. I'm senior surgeon. Yes, probably I don't understand the map quite good, but but I understand all these feelings. When you got the order, some pretty much crazy, but it seems, on the map it seems to be quite reasonable, but on the land, when you see it, you think like, what are they smoking? Like, what is going on? Sometimes you got this, and I would like to speak more with the Marines and surgeons, with the soldiers who are making all these orders to get some deep point, how to make all these operations clear, better, with a much better result, make it more effective, with minimal level of casualties.
And the way we're doing this podcast is we are all part of the center. I'm the founder and director of the foundation. Ievgen, director of operations for the foundation, and also one of the co-hosts of the podcast here. And your role is going to be to recruit other Ukrainians, sergeants, soldiers who want to speak about their experiences like you've had, because you have that same experience. And we're going to record those interviews in Ukrainian, but we're also going to use software to translate these into English. So English-speaking military history audience can learn from the lessons here. Because for me, as an American living in Ukraine, wife, expecting our first child this year, we're going to raise our family Ukrainian. I want my children to live in a strong, secure state, and would like to bring my experience studying and teaching military history to the Ukrainian state, right? For future officers, for current officers, so that the state is always remembers what happened in this war and never lets it happen again. Meaning, we're so strong that Russia says there's no way we're going to invade. So, for example, if Russia stops fighting because they come up with some great deal, hopefully soon something stops the fighting, but we have to make sure that it never happens again. And how do you make sure that never happens again? well, Ukraine's they're like the arms factory of Europe and the world. They have all these great weapons, and they have this historical center where it's a huge YouTube, podcast success. Everyone's studying this stuff because they're so obsessed with winning, in the future that, of course, we're never going to invade Ukraine again. So.
I hope it's gonna work, because I think if Russians would know that we got such an army, they would think more before to invade us. I think probably they would go to somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and they were counting on the fact before this war that nobody would stand up and fight for the state. And
Yes.
what Russia needs to understand is Ukraine is not just going to, after the war, go back to the way it was, where military was kind of this fringe occupation that most people didn't want to do, and think about it's now central to the state, right? And it's never going to be neglected. The study of military history is going to become the best in the world in Ukraine, because we have the most recent history that's relevant to everyone else, and everyone else wants to study Ukrainian military history. So that's really why it's important. So you're going to be bringing on your own guests, interviewing them in Ukrainian. We're going to be translating that into English, because the audience for this podcast, to me, is Ukrainian officers, Ukrainians who are passionate about their own national story that comes out of this war. I'm a big believer that countries are built based on their stories. I ran a marketing agency for the last 15 years. To me, marketing is just branding or history is branding for your nation. Ukraine, before this war, had a very complicated history. World War II, you had Western Ukraine was not very pro-Red Army, because they were under different empires for a long time, and Eastern Ukraine had a much more pro-Red Army kind of memory of history, and then you have the Ukrainian insurgent army. You had a very divided history coming out of World War II, which is still used today by the Russians to divide.
I can say that due to the war, which we can see, I think that was this historical question between East and West that was pretty much made on purpose, because the history tells us that when Red Army came to Ukraine, they made us free from these fascists, but fascists destroyed all the city, all the villages, but not the Red Army. They were like defenders, they were good guys. And now we can see this Russian army, they came to Ukraine, and they say that they make us free from Nazi's government and the Ukrainian army. But the thing is, where is the Russian army? Mm-hmm. The city is totally destroyed. Yeah. Well, totally destroyed. Like, you don't have any building which could be used for living. Mm-hmm. And who made it?
Yeah.
Fascists or from
the Russian Red Army. Yeah. So really the history of Ukraine is divided among a lot of different regions that have different empires that ruled it for several centuries.
What I can say more, when you got this destroyed region, mm-hmm. on this totally destroyed region, you can create anything you want, mm-hmm. any informatic sphere, you can just remake the state mm-hmm. from 0 point with new history, with new people, because that was destroyed totally. Mm-hmm. And what was before and who made it, mm-hmm. you can just, make people forget about it. So I think this is the main strategic point of Russian Federation. And as I know, I spoke with them, with mm-hmm. some of them in the captivity, and they said the same, like, we are destroying it, but we will recover, we will make a new state with new people, mm-hmm. new language, with new faith, new history, and everyone will forget who made it, who mm-hmm. destroyed it, who killed all the people. And I think that this tactic is not new. Mm-hmm. They used to make it before, to do it in the same way. And the history of Ukraine is a history of all world wars. And this is not the first time Russians do the same to Ukrainian nation, to Ukrainian country. Like,
Yeah.
coming, destroying totally everything, and make a new state with new people, with new story.
No, and that's the history of Ukraine is unfortunately a lot of occupation of a lot of Ukraine by the Russian Empire over several centuries. Other parts, like Western Ukraine, weren't occupied by the Russian Empire, and then Southern Ukraine was under Ottoman Crimean Khanate control. So there's a huge patchwork of historical memories that makes up the modern state of Ukraine, and this is why we have Ihor Kosyak here, who I'll let him introduce himself here, is our director of the center, and Ihor, former retired colonel. Give us your background. Where are you from, and how long did you serve, and how did you get to becoming a chief of a historical center inside the armed forces and now here?
Thank you, Sam, for your question. And I'm try to shortly introduce myself. I was born in the city of Lozova in the Kharkiv region, and through my childhood, it was like a basement for my future life, because I admired tanks.
Kharkiv's where all the best tanks are made.
I like literature. I bought toys. I made by myself tanks, and I grew in this idea that after graduating from secondary school, I will become an officer of the tank school. And my dream realized in 2000 or in 1992, I entered Kharkiv Tank Military School and graduated from it in 1986 and
1996?
86.
Oh, 1986. So this was still during the Soviet Union then?
Yeah, yeah. I served in the Soviet Union. Even I had a background, communist background, because I was a member of Communist Party cell at the time. And after graduating, I served on different positions, from starting from the tank platoon commander, and my service in tank troops ended on the position of the chief of staff of the battalion.
And what year was that?
In 1992, when Soviet Union collapsed, I served at the time in Chechen Republic. It started that independence, and also I witnessed when we talked with President Dudayev at that time, and he invited us as Soviet officers to serve in Chechen army. But at that time, I clearly realized that I am Ukrainian, and I came back to Ukraine, and I returned to Ukraine, and there started service in training center, Desna. It's near Chernihiv. And my last position in this training center was chief of staff of the battalion. And in 1994, I entered Armed Forces Academy. At that time, it called our Academy of Armed Forces of Ukraine. In 1996, I graduated, and this was first bunch of military officers who entered to National Ukrainian Military Academy for operational and strategic level of education, and we were first who graduated from that. And after graduation, I was selected to serve in J-3. It's main operational directorate of the General Staff. And more than 20 years, I served on different positions raised from the officer to the chief of department in this directorate, and the final position in this main operational directorate was chief of the territorial defense department.
And what year was that?
I was at that time responsible for whole territorial defense of Ukraine.
In which period?
It was this department were created in 2018, and in 2016 I was selected to position of the deputy of the military representative of Ukraine in NATO mission to Ukraine, or to NATO, and from 2016 to the start of 2021, I served as deputy military representative of mission of Ukraine to NATO.
So you were in Brussels for
Yeah,
5 years.
For 4 years in Brussels. And after returning to Ukraine, about 1 year to the start of the war, I served as chief of capabilities directorate in J5. It's like the main defense planning directorate of the general staff. And, when the war started, there were idea of our headquarters and also of leadership of the armed forces to collect and preserve our military history, and especially history of the full-scale aggression. And with this idea, in 2022, were created a directive of the chief of defense of the time, General Zaluzhny, and I was selected as chief of the military history center, and started to create this center. The idea of the center that we closely work with one of the advisors to General Zaluzhny. He is former general, and we look for history not only as a history of military events, but also as a history that combined with politics and economics issues. That's why in the center, what were created in 2022, there was different branches. First branch, it's a branch that studying politics and political situation and how it developed during the full-scale aggression. Second part, it's two branches that one of them studied operational art and strategy, and second one tactics, tactics of different branches and armed services of the Ukrainian armed forces. Also, we have a branch that studied economics history. And as every unit, every organism of the armed forces, we need administrative cell, and that's two were part of the center. Later on, appeared idea to create an armed forces museum, and that's why we created a branch, museum branch. So when we study this museum possibility of creation of museum, we realize that this is a very expensive and very hard process, and it couldn't be very fast. That's why we started to work not only on preserving military history, but disseminating this information to Ukrainian public. And especially we want that our new generation, pupils in secondary school, students in universities know this history. And that's why we created content and with agreement with our Ministry of Education, give to them this official military story, and also all materials what we created in Military History Center. During the 2 years for the end of the story of the Military History Center of Armed Forces of Ukraine in 2024, when the center were disbanded.
And it was disbanded in what?
In
Summer of 2024.
Yes, the final date was 30th of June 2024.
Okay.
And during this period of 2 years, we produced a monthly review on military history. It's part of content, and also it's open source information. You can find it on still functioning our Military History Center site. And also were published a book about first year of the war. Very big amount of our job, and it's like also it's a part to study military equipment and tactics of using this military equipment, and how evolve military tactics, operational art, depending on the military equipment and armament what we had in Ukraine. And that's why we had a branch which study military armament equipment. And also for these 2 years we produced 2 books for military equipment that were on the armament of armed forces, and also that were provided to Ukraine by our partners through these 2 years. Compare with Russian equipment, what Russian had on their armor storage during this conflict. And when the center were disbanded.
That's when you and I met right after or right before the center was being disbanded.
Yeah, in July. Yeah. That's where our first meeting. I want to preserve this history and have contact with my former officers who are scientists in history, who right now they have a military background, and they agreed to continue military history study after the war ended. Mm-hmm. And with this idea of preservation of Ukrainian history that we discussed with them, there appeared idea to create a military history center in Borderlands Foundation. And the main task of the center, what we vision together, that's conducted of research of military issues, also preserving military history of the this full-scale aggression, and studying of tactics, operational arts, also studying the historical aspects of developing of military arts.
Yes. So one of the things that inspired me to launch this center and this podcast, actually, when we have now, is the history, as you know, is very difficult during the war to get your arms around. A lot of officers, especially, are not ready to speak openly because they're on active service, they're too busy. Ievgen, fortunately, has left service, so he can speak freely. He knows a lot of people who've been injured or left service or returned from captivity who are willing to speak. And a lot of the officers we're going to want to speak to either will not be able to speak during the war while on active service, or if they do, there's only a limited amount that they can say. And we're going to have some of these interviews in future episodes with active serving officers. But I got a request through a contact of mine, and they said, hey, there's this brigade that wants to study military history. They're on the front lines, actually in Kharkiv region, and they'd like to find someone who knows the West Point military history method, because they've researched the whole world and they think West Point has the best methodology out there for teaching history, and I happen to agree with them. I used to teach there. I was a graduate of West Point, and what they said was, hey, we'd like to understand what can we learn from military history that's relevant to our current experience. So actually, the different types of podcasts, and I want to talk about this with all of you here, is we're going to do first-person memory, like Ievgen's podcasts are going to be coming up, but then also historical case studies for Ukrainian officers about, okay, well, history never repeats itself, but it has some patterns and things that are very helpful. And the great comfort of reading history is you're not the first army that's ever gone through this, right? When you're on a front line that's static, where there's new technology coming in at a very fast pace, and you're trying to figure out how to defeat a numerically superior, materially more abundant army, when has this happened before? Well, this has happened before. So we're actually producing a historical case study, which we're going to release soon as part of this podcast for that brigade, and say, hey, here's a video of us discussing this. Here's some readings. We've translated this English document into Ukrainian, and here's a way you can go study it. And by the way, if you have any questions on this, please call us, right? We'll get on a Zoom. We'll even come meet with you if you want, and see if your officers can take this and use history to solve current battlefield problems and get an edge. Because at this point in the war, the only way Ukraine can turn the tide of the war is not through, we're not going to have more people. It is going to be out innovating the enemy, and innovation comes from not technology, but integration of technology into doctrine, to training, into tactics. The way that you employ new technology and train with that makes a difference, nothing else, right? And you can't just throw technology at the problem. You got to have an army that thinks faster and more innovatively than the Russians do. The big Soviet army is always going to beat the small Soviet army, as they say. So that's one of the other case studies we're going to do. And then also, so first-person recollection of the current war for the historical record, bringing in historical case studies that will be helpful to Ukrainian military officers now during the fight, which led me to the urgency of, hey, we need to do something now to start helping with the current fight. And then also, what other work did your historical center do, which we're also going to do podcasts on, is Ukrainian military history, right? It's from the past.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking, that one of the problems of Ukraine in previous times and what we faced in armed forces since 2014, it's a lack of understanding of our history background by a new generation. And a lot of people in Ukraine that studied in Soviet time, they continue thinking in the way what were presented in Soviet historian books during the secondary schools when they study history.
Yeah.
And it's very different from real history of Ukraine. And that's where, to me, a transition when I receive new historical information and I realized how this information in Soviet books were non-true, and when they turn in history in the way what they want to do. And later on, when this truth became public, and everyone who could receive this information, that's very easy. Just you need to spend time, and you need little efforts to search and study this information. And people who understand what's happened and what's the real history of Ukraine, they turn in own minds. And that's what happened with a lot of former Soviet officers when they became understand the real history of Ukraine, and I think they became patriots of Ukraine. I will talk about my personal challenge, and also in 2014, when there was part of my job when the territorial defense battalions need to move to combat zone. And sometimes I move from one battalion to other, and there is big distances without troops, without anything, and sometimes it could be dangerous. And when you see block post with Ukrainian flag, it's I don't what's the feelings? It's feeling when you
Safety.
see own flag, and after that own language. That's turning point of your mind. That's you know that you can rely on those peoples, and you believe in those guys who are fought together. Even I was in staff, and I not like Ievgen were in the front line, but we all one piece of our Ukrainian nations. And to me, 2014, it's turning point when Ukrainian nation started to form as a unity of people with own vision and with common mind of our future and how we persist this future. That's and that's the part of history. That's the part of history, not only military, but also for a new generation of Ukrainians who will continue to keep survive our country, to keep Ukraine independent. And that's the most important part of our historical studies.
I can confirm it because when I came back from the captivity from Russia, and this feeling when we came to the bus with the Ukrainian driver, we moved to Ukraine and to Ukrainian government. We crossed the Ukrainian border and seen these Ukrainian flags. We saw our people with our military suits and with our, with our weapon, with our flags, and I cannot even explain this feeling. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't jump, but I was so happy and so calm that this another birthday. That's like you are reborn, but not like a small child, but you understand everything. So you feel that you live, you are free. In your country, you're free. In the occupation, you don't have any freedom, like 100%. And I'm 100%, I can confirm all these words. Flag means a lot.
Yeah.
Your state, your troops, your citizens means a lot.
Yeah, also I could add, Sam, that I don't know how it's work, but to me, I think Ukrainians have a gen of freedom. They
Freedom
breathe,
is. I remember when.
they breathe by freedom, and it's our nature.
Well, I remember when I first moved to Ukraine in 2018. There was the National Trade Union building, which was burnt during Maidan, was still under reconstruction, and there was this big cover over that building, which is now rebuilt now, and it said, "Freedom is our religion." And there were these chains breaking, and I think one of the most interesting things that I see, and I come from America, which likes to say we believe in and fight for and defend freedom around the world, and that's something I was proud to have served in our military. We didn't do everything perfect all the time, but I think generally we tried to do the right thing and we were a force for good in the world. But then when I moved to Ukraine, I realized that in America you have like Texas, which is really super passionate about freedom. And Ukrainians, to me, I always tell my friends, hey, I live in like the Texas of Europe. They love freedom more than anyone else. And I think that not a lot of Americans understand that. I think there's this political division in America now about whether Ukrainians are good to support or not. But then everyone who comes over here, they just have a completely different perception of, Ukraine, because hey, what would I do if someone's... And Americans can't even conceive of, there's no scenario in their heads where anyone would come and occupy or fight on their country. So it's almost, they take it for granted, the security and freedom that they have. But they love guns and they love to say, I would fight for my land if anything happened. And Ukrainians are doing what Americans say they would do in that situation, which is
everything starts from your desires. So if you think that you will do this, then at least you will try. Before the full-scale invasion, I thought that I will do this, and when the time came, I was ready. I did. I was in a vacation. Actually, on 24th of February of 2022, I had reserved a hotel in Egypt. I was in a vacation. I had to go to the sea, to this Red Sea, and but I've seen the news and I've seen like all ambassadors are leaving Ukraine, and I knew that yes, it's gonna happen, and because we were speaking with the guys 3 or 4 months before, we were discussing all this situation with the Russian troops on our border, and my commander of my platoon, he wrote a message that because I told him that I'm gonna go for my vacation, I will go to Egypt. First he said, yeah, of course, no problem. And then after the news, he wrote that do not be so fast. And I thought, yeah, probably I will not go anywhere. And when the time, he just next day he wrote a message that come to the position. We were at that time we were already on the Mariupol direction, Sector M, and I bought the ticket on bus by my own money, and I went there, and I knew what's gonna happen. I knew that it's gonna be a war with the Russian, not with Taliban or some I don't know. Boko Haram in Africa. If you go to Africa to fight with some radicals, that's not a problem. You can comparison to this war. You can go there like as your work from 8 to 5.
You had a pretty good odds that was a one-way ticket, right? And you understood.
Yes, I understood that it's gonna be a one-way ticket. And the most funny story is that I was going at night by bus to Donbass on the east, and I was reading the news, and I saw, we got a lot of pro-Russian political parties and policymakers who said during the years that Russia is a good state, Putin is a nice guy, yes, lovely guy, probably one of the best. And when the situation occurred, all of them were escaping from Ukraine to Spain, to Italy, some of them to Russia by their private planes, and I was reading that, smiling. I thought, who is an idiot? in this situation, me or them. Well, and this is the good story because we can see that in Europe, in United States, there are a lot of people, public people, policymakers, who says that like, Putin is a brilliant guy. Yes, they may say this, but if something like that, such disaster will happen in their countries with the Russian Federation, they will be the first people who will escape from their native countries.
Yeah.
Like, don't even no doubts about it.
Yeah.
Look at Ukraine, we got the same. We got all these pro-Russian guys. They just left Ukraine in 1 week before the full-scale invasion.
Well, to credit some of them who are pro-Russian stayed and have changed their minds, but yes, I think most of them decided to leave. But everyone's going to obviously take a look at what people did before and after the invasion and judge people by their actions. So
exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, I think for the audience listening and for just to understand our vision is, I've asked Ievgen to recruit and interview people in Ukrainian. We have a team that's going to translate with modern AI voice dubbing technology in the voice to translate those conversations into English. And we have a team that's going to do the same from English into Ukrainian, because I want to unite the two communities I care about most, which is Ukrainian veterans and the American veteran community, military officer community. I'm still friends with a lot of active service people that a friend of mine called me, who's a brigade commander in America, and he said, hey, can you help us figure out this drone thing? Like, I've got tons of Ukrainian friends who'd be happy to go visit you in Hawaii and train you on drones. Of course, they'd probably do it for free, just cover my hotel and expenses. But the point is, my friends, who are, I think, part of the most powerful military in the world, have a lot to learn from Ukrainian soldiers. They are hungry to learn. They know that they don't have the same combat experience. Nobody, thankfully, in the world has had to go through what Ukraine military has had to go through, but they know that could change. Russia's a threat, China's a threat, and they know their soldiers need to learn.
We have so many to tell, because there is a million of stories, for example, with the Ukrainian legionnaires from different countries. At the very beginning, a lot of soldiers came from European Union, from Finland, from France, from Britain, etc. And they tried to help, they tried to fight. And the funny story is that when they came to the front line and they started to fight, but they were asking commanders, where is the artillery, where are the tanks, where is the aircrafts, and etc. And for them, all of them used to serve in the European or American army. And they think that if something happens, the aircraft F-16 is coming just like automatically,
Yeah.
But they don't understand that Russian Federation, that is not Taliban.
Yeah.
That is not an Iraq army,
Yeah.
or IGIL, Islamic State, or etc. This is second, the most powerful army in the world. You send one F-16, they will send 3 aircrafts, their own.
Oh, and they're going to shoot the F-16 down.
Yes, when the war started on February, at the very beginning, that was something unbelievable. We just sent 2 mines, and back we got something, I don't even know, Iskander or something like that. That was crazy. Like, you shoot once, they shoot 100 times. That is, you will not got these perfect positions in a real war. You will not got the perfect logistic. You will not got water. You will not got sneakers and etc. stuff in the real war, because the enemy will not let you to do this. And this is something what people, truly soldiers, have to study
and train for and
yes,
understand.
Exactly, yeah. That's why I'm really glad, because, when we got, before the full-scale invasion, I was serving in army like almost more than 3 years in Marines. And that was pretty hard, because this is Ukrainian army. That was much more poor than Europeans or United States army. And we didn't have anything actually. We were sleeping like on the grounds in the forest. We, like got nothing, and so when the war started, we were okay. Like no problems. Everything is great.
Train like you fight. You
Exactly.
used to
Yes.
say that all the time. Yeah. So the vision here for the foundation is to let you bring on your own guests and interview them, and we translate that and get the ground soldier stories. Ihor, you were colleagues and you went to you saw all of these generals now who have, some of them have retired that we can interview, and some of them are still serving. So you have the relationships to bring on people who you can interview in Ukrainian, and if we have English-speaking guests that can speak good English, we'll definitely do those interviews with myself or Rob Lee or some of our other English collaborators. Rob Lee is Senior Research Fellow at Foreign Policy Research Institute, and he interviewed Ievgen here for over 3 hours on your experience in captivity because he wants to tell the audience back in America what's going on. And you've got a very good relationship with Rob, and you're going to help him bring in some English-speaking. Rob is a former Marine, so like Ievgen, they've got that little, they've got that extra chromosome or some gene that Marines have. And Rob is, we definitely want to let him use this podcast to do some of his research. He's working on a book. I think Rob's going to be the premier, let's say, chronicler at a military history level of this war because of his background as a, he's a Russian military analyst who's been studying the Russian military and actually worked on that problem for over 10 years. He was in the Marines. He served in Afghanistan, but then also served in Georgia, working with an army that's under threat from the Russian army. So he's, I think, one of the best people. We want to empower researchers like Rob and other people to come have these conversations and give him, okay, we're going to film this for you, we're going to transcribe it for you, we're going to translate it into Ukrainian so it's helpful for Ukrainian public, it's helpful for the Americans, and we'll get it out there to the world. We're going to also invite your old colleagues at the History Center to write. We're translating some of their work now. We're going to put that on the blog. And also invite Ukrainian officers who are serving now. One of the great ways to reform an army in combat, people always say, we're going to wait to peacetime, we're going to figure out how to form a new doctrine. Actually, war is the best time to reform an army because the pressure and the constant feedback at the battlefield, whoever figures out how to reform their army first and better is going to dictate the terms of the peace of this war, whether it's a complete victory on one side or the other, which I don't think anyone feels is, but stranger things have happened, but definitely Russia I don't think is going to completely win this war, but Ukraine, obviously, it's very unlikely for as President Zelensky said, we don't have the resources necessarily to liberate everything with the military power. But being able to dictate a favorable peace that keeps Ukraine secure and leaves open the possibility of recovery of territories in the future, I think is what everyone, as of filming right now in 2025, hopes for. And a chance to build a strong military that prevents, or if the opportunity presents itself, allows for recovery of lost territories in the future. That is the goal. And with this foundation, we want to be a place where Ukrainians can write their own history. I'm an American. I'd like to record some podcasts. One of these days, I'll write some articles. I've got some case studies I can put out there as a military historian. But I'm not the be-all, end-all authority on Ukrainian military history. I want to create a place where Ukrainians can be their own authorities on military history. Officers who are serving on the front lines right now are welcome to, and we would invite you to submit, hey, this is what's going on right now. This we think is helpful for future historians to study, but it's also helpful for the current units. Maybe you can learn something from what we've learned about unmanned ground vehicles or unmanned systems integration into ground attacks, et cetera, so that by discussing the current state of the history while it's really fresh, there's a potential to be like a journal for the Ukrainian military, something that's outside of the military where if you want to submit an article under a pen name where you don't want to have your name out there publicly and you can speak more freely, or you want to put it out there under your name and your unit to give credit to what you've done, we'd like to be that place. The great militaries that have reformed in combat, like I remember when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, General Petraeus, who we've interviewed, and we're going to release that as an episode on this podcast. One of the great things he did was he came back after he commanded in Iraq, and then he reformed American doctrine to reflect the experience that we were having. And I saw between my first tour in Iraq in 2005, when things were not going well, and when I came back as a commander in 2008, when things were going well, the difference that his intellectual energy and leadership created for doctrine that was reforming the military and allowed a much more successful outcome than it could have been a disaster, right? And I don't think anyone right now as a historian would look back and say Iraq was a shining success, but it certainly ended a lot better than it could have if those reforms were not put into place. And then Afghanistan, of course, General Petraeus in the interview talks about why that didn't go well compared to Iraq, which was because we didn't reform there fast enough. So that's really one of the things I want this center to do, is be a place where Ukrainians can write their own history in real time, share it with their colleagues, and debate it, and then innovate based off of it. Because history is a constant iterative cycle, and those who use it to innovate on the battlefield, like your center was helping with in your studies. We want to kind of resurrect that and provide those services to the armed forces in English and Ukrainian, because Americans are watching, English-speaking allied militaries are watching, and if they can see in English what's happening, comment on it, submit some ideas also, that conversation between the Ukrainian military and its allies that are supporting it, that want to be contributing to this fight historically, intellectually, that's the conversation we'd like to facilitate. So with that, I'd like to close this first episode. Thank you, Ihor, for all the work you did in the armed forces. It was a privilege to meet you through our friend Vladislav Klitschkov. Actually, we need to bring him on the podcast. You need to interview him about his experience on the 93rd Brigade. Actually, that's an old Soviet brigade which created the Holodny Yar, the new Ukrainian military history, integrated it into its motto and its brigade history, which is a really cool story in the Donbass. He was there and actually just had dinner with his deputy commander, Hennady Shapoval, who was commander of Operational Command South, who was also a graduate of U.S. War College, or Army War College. And he was telling me what it was like to serve with General Klitschkov and creating that new kind of Ukrainian military history tradition for one of the most famous brigades now. I think that'd be a great interview, hopefully a future podcast soon in Ukrainian that we can translate into English. I know Vladislav has pretty good English, but he'd be much more comfortable talking about his brigade and their history in Ukrainian. And he can also talk about the history of the military psychological recovery, moral psychological recovery. Actually, I think he was your commander when you were at the Military History Center. Did you? So you were parallel.
Yeah. We are on the military science branch.
Okay.
Of general staff.
So yeah, he was a colleague of yours on the general staff, and he was the one who introduced us to.
We closely cooperated because his directorate, it's also they try to preserve the mind of
moral psychological,
yeah, moral psychological, and history is one of the part of developing this moral.
Yeah, so he was the one who introduced me to you, and we're bringing you in, and hopefully we'll bring all of your colleagues So if you're watching this podcast and you want to support the center, there's a place to donate right below this. We put out all this content for free. But any donation, one time or recurring, will allow us to slowly build up the reserves to just build more of these podcasts, but also to hire in the future. Our vision is to hire all of your former colleagues. When demobilization happens, they all want to keep working on the history, maybe part-time, maybe full-time in the center. And our vision is to create that place where historians can come and get paid to do history, because if you don't get paid, it's not going to actually, you're not going to be able to put a lot of time and energy into it. We want to create a professional military history class of Ukrainian historians that are the best in the world because of the experience they have here in the war, translating that into the academic and military science realm, putting it out there to the world, and they get paid well to do it. The other thing we'd like to do with our center is create brigade histories. So all the brigades right now are gathering and have tons of data. I know that my old regiment in Iraq, we created a history of the regiment. I wrote the regimental history. I did a documentary on our regiment, which when we go to Washington, D.C. with General McMaster in a couple months, he'll be there talking, and he was my old commander, very famous commander, went on to be National Security Advisor, commander of the famous 3rd Cavalry Regiment, and I created for that unit a regimental history movie and then a written regimental history that went on to form the foundation of documenting what we did. And we want to give every brigade the opportunity to give us their data so we can help them with a professional historian and filmmakers create the story of what that brigade did during this full-scale war with Russia. We also want to create stories on heroes of Ukraine, living and dead, and if it's on a fallen service member, be able to allow people who watch these stories to donate to their families. When the brigade puts their unit history out, which we want to help them produce, we want to be able to let people who see that brigade donate to that brigade to support them. During the war or after the war, it could be for we had at our regiment a Fallen Heroes Scholarship Fund or something like that. So if someone produces history, we want to be able to benefit their cause for that and create that. We want to have battlefield case studies. I've put together a tour of the Battle of Kiev that I've given to General Petraeus and a lot of other distinguished visitors who've come to Ukraine. I can go out and give them a tour of the Battle of Kiev. We'll do Battle of Mariupol in the future, God willing, on the ground with Ievgen and others. Kharkiv region. We want to be able to, after the war, if people want to come and see Ukraine, one of the things I know before the war, people would say, well, what is Ukraine? Isn't that part of Russia? Like, where is that? And now everyone knows that Ukraine. It's Ukraine, it's free, capital of freedom. And I have this theory and this belief that after the war, people are going to want to come to Ukraine and take what we're going to create, which is the Heroes of Ukraine tour, where they come in, they see Battle of Kiev, they go out to Kharkiv, they see Battle of Kharkiv, go see beautiful cultural center of Ukraine, Kharkiv, which was actually the first capital in the Soviet Union of Ukraine. They could go out and see, Odessa region, Mykolaiv, Kherson, and
Chernobyl.
Yeah, Chernobyl. All the you can go to Chernobyl and see. There was a battle up there. We could certainly take you up there where the Russians kicked up a bunch of radiation, and go see all these beautiful different parts of Ukraine. Poltava region would be a great stop on the way through. My wife's mother's actually from Poltava region. Her family, although she grew up in Kryvyi and was born there, but the history of Ukraine and people who've seen this on television, I believe, are going to want to see it. I'd like veterans to show them their country and tell them the stories so that people never forget. They fall in love with the country, hopefully move here, start a business here, invest here, donate to support veterans, psychological, physical recovery. And that's going to be the vision. As the chief marketing officer of Ukraine, and I think the flagship product here will be the Come See Ukraine, and we'll help you see the whole country in a couple weeks and fall in love with it. So that's the vision. It's a privilege to have you guys on the team. I definitely, this is like the culmination of everything I've ever done professionally. I've had these random different careers. I was a military officer who studied history and taught history. I've run a marketing agency, and I love storytelling and marketing. And now, obviously, supporting a country that is my adopted home, where we're going to raise our family, and try to bring all that together to promote Ukraine as a country and as a brand to its own people and to the rest of the world. So this historical center is definitely a culmination of all the passions I have in my life, and it's a privilege to do it with you guys and have you on the team. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.